This is the Julius Profiles podcast, brought to you by Julius, an influencer marketing software solution that adds a human touch to strategic and creative advertising campaigns. On this podcast, we put people first, discussing the marketers, influencers, and consumers of this growing industry. Join us as we talk to industry experts and influencers to dive beyond the day-to-day of influencer marketing and into the nuances of this dynamic marketing practice. Learn more and subscribe to the podcast at juliusworks.com.
So, welcome to the first Julius Profiles podcast. My name is Danny Palestine, the head of customer success here at Julius. I'm going to be your host for this podcast. And here we're going to discuss everything about influencer marketing, but not just about the day-to-day. We're going to really talk about what makes this industry so interesting and valuable for marketing, and that is the people. And what do I mean by people? I mean the marketers, the influencers, and the consumers of this practice, and understanding what makes them go round. We are, as advertisers and as influencers, we are people first. We believe in connecting with people in an authentic way, and that's how Julius came to be. We believe in learning about who these people are as people first, never sacrificing authenticity for engagement. We believe in building real relationships, and it's how we treat our customers, our employees, and of course, influencers. So really excited to have you guys all join us for the podcast today and for future episodes. Really excited to have you all on listening to us today. And today I have some awesome guests from our customer over at Social Chain. If you guys want to introduce yourself, and we'll get things started.
Yeah, hi. My name's Christie Childers. I'm an influencer relationships manager at Social Chain US in New York City.
Hi, my name is Andy Kraut, and I'm head of partnerships at Social Chain US in New York City.
Yeah. So thanks for coming by, guys. I know you had a long walk across
It was a nightmare. It was 2.5 blocks.
Yeah. And this winter cold, I'm sure, was a beast to deal with today. But thank you for making it the long trek. So let's start off the conversation with just kind of talking about the topic at hand and being people first. Why do you guys think it is so important to actually be people first?
Yeah, so I think that as marketers or working at a brand or as influencers, people are really the center of everything. So when you put what people want and what they need and what they're really looking for at the forefront of your brand or the brand that you're marketing for, that really allows you to create those long-term consumer relationships versus just short-term purchase intent.
Yeah, I really love that. You know, I think that we are marketers and by nature, we are people's people. And I don't mean that we're introverted or extroverted. I mean that like we are in the business of studying and internalizing culture through the lens of people and then creating marketing objectives that can talk to people. And without being people first, it'll fall flat. If you're, again, keeping to what we were saying to talk about marketing, if you're not being people first and you're just thinking about, I am a marketer first and I have key messaging and branding requirements and objectives to hit, it's going to fall flat and it's just going to be a miss.
It's honestly why marketing exists, right? Otherwise, it would just be APR financing, health benefits, nutrition labels. It's like there's a reason that something exists outside of factual stuff about your product or service.
Yeah,
Totally.
And I think honestly, half the reason for me I even considered going into marketing was taking classes in school about anthropology. I think I see marketing and influencer marketing specifically, what I do, as an anthropological study that just never ends.
Yeah, so it's funny that you bring up college. I went to the mighty Rutgers University of New Jersey, and I didn't study media studies. I studied communication theory.
I didn't either.
It's all about like body language and eye contact and the stuff that we all know about and like pauses after sentences and things like that. And that kind of got me into this mentality of like, wow, people are incredibly dynamic despite, a lot of this science being a little bit more passive. There's a lot to be done here in terms of connecting to people on a one-to-one basis. And that's how I got into this. I mean, it was 2008, the crash happened, and I was really looking for jobs, so I found myself in PR. But, it was a really interesting way to kind of think about, how much I enjoy connecting with people and then turning that into a marketing objective. And I think that whole sentiment directly translates to influencer marketing and how, using people for that human connection by a marketer, if you do it right, can be really, really powerful.
Definitely. And I think it's just always important with influencer marketing. I feel like it has become a saturated space. And a lot of times brands and agencies see their influencers as just another part of their media plan. But for me, it's super, super important that my influencers are my partners. They're my content creators. Like they are human beings first and foremost. And I will never treat any influencer that I'm working with just like they're a part of my media plan.
Yeah. I completely echo that sentiment. And the thing is that when you don't do that, I feel like everybody knows.
Everybody knows and everybody loses. So people first, like, just remember there is a human person on the other end of the content that this person creates that understands, that has seen a sock puppet before, that understands how marionettes work. So, everyone understands that sometimes brands have partnerships with people that are in their feed. And so if that comes off as cool, everybody gets a high five. And if it comes off as gross, everybody loses. The follower loses. The person creating the content loses, and the brand loses.
Really good perspective. Yeah. I remember we had a client that was like that. We were having like a bit of a back and forth, and they were like, "But we're paying them, so why don't they just do what I ask?"
That's very common.
Yeah, and I'm just like, because like we can't just be a total jerk about this.
Absolutely.
Like we need to treat them like somebody who we need to respect, and then to everything you're saying, that will trickle down into great content and hopefully great engagement.
And I think that's our job as marketers, is to share that with the brands and inform them, because, sometimes they don't know, and you think like, yeah, we're paying this person and they're supposed to do this for us. But like we've been saying, they're people too. So they have things going on in their lives. They need certain considerations to meet their deadlines because something happened here and something happened there. Totally. And at the end of the day, like they're people. And I think that that's something that we really should always consult to our brands.
And I think that, a lot of the time, especially in the earlier days of the practice, there was a lot of education in terms of like exactly everything we're saying. But I think now sometimes that education gets translated almost into protection. Like you have to protect the influencer, because if you're working at a brand and if you have an agency, you don't need to work with this person. They're just somebody who is going to do something for you. But as an agency person, like my former self and your current selves, like you're the one that needs to have that relationship and have those conversations with people. So there is a layer of defense. Like I need to preserve I need to speak on their behalf. I am their advocate for this whole to-do of what we're working on, which is kind of an interesting position, because you need to keep your client happy, but you also need to keep the influencer happy.
It's definitely interesting.
Well, and every time we hit a hurdle with a client understanding in this way, I just think of it as job security.
Yeah.
Being able to explain the value of social is kind of the headline of Social Chain and what Christie and I do every day. So, and I'll say that if everyone knew exactly how to do influencer market from birth, we would be out of a job.
We wouldn't be here.
So I think I totally understand why it's the same person who buys TV spots wants the same thing to work like this, then they want to see it on a spreadsheet. And I think it's just on us to show the nuance on it. And to me, it's like some of my favorite parts of my job is educating about what's changed in digital and social.
Not gonna lie, me too. And what's cool about my job right now is I get to get out of the agency world and talk to like a lot of different people from a lot of perspectives and teach them about exactly what we're talking about. So it's kind of cool. Why is it so important to get to know people first? I think that in today's digital age, here's the example. And Mom, if you're listening to this, I'm sorry. I love you so much.
Your mom knows how to use a podcast? That's amazing.
I don't know, but that's the example I'm going to start with.
I told my mom we were coming on today to record, and she goes, "Where can I listen to it?" And I was like, "Well, I'll send you the link when it's done." She goes, "How long?"
So listen, love my mom to death. My mom has found it easier to send, for a multitude of reasons, let's just say, to send out cards digitally. So she puts in a image and types her little message, and it gets sent to us, and it's really easy. And honestly, I love getting them. They're often hilarious and they make me feel good. But then I realized that like I'm starting to lose track of the cards that my mom wrote to me, that like the handwritten note that I'm used to seeing my mom's handwriting. I'm like, where are these in the mail? And no better or worse, but like eventually, like, is handwriting going to die? To be dramatic about this. And then I start to think, about my PR days and through my influencer marketing work, how like we used to write handwritten cards to our influencers. And sometimes for our holiday stuff here at Julius, we'll write a handwritten card. So I kind of want to hear your guys' perspectives on like, what are the things that you think that we should do as marketers, as professionals, as influencer marketers, that we can do to maintain the sense of personalization conversation with our clients, with our influencers, and even with our colleagues. Do you guys have any initial thoughts about that?
So you are talking to a guy who invited everyone to his wedding through Evite.
Yeah.
So I...
and I'm not knocking on it.
No.
There's a purpose for sure.
So I guess my thought is there's a difference between personalization and physicalization.
There you go.
I think that it's typical. I think my mom would have the opposite point of view as your mom, where it's like, she's like, nobody writes handwritten, comments anymore. So it's funny that you and your mom have a swap relationship than me and my mom. But I think that the thing we always try to keep track on is this level of personalization. And that can take form in so many different ways. And I think that especially in social and especially in this world of influencers, there's this desire to stand out. And I think that if I'm a betting man, the word authentic is going to be used a lot in this podcast, in this episode, and in future episodes. But that's how it stays true. So I think that right now, actually having a handwritten component or things that take more time isn't always necessarily needed. But I do think some version of leaning in and knowing who you're talking to in your correspondence, instead of just, I think everyone knows what a templated outreach looks like. Christie and her role and my role. If people have understand the template you used in order to reach out to them, it's 50% off the bat are just not going to respond.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. Outreach is such a big component when it comes to working with influencers. And we did an influencer panel actually not too long ago where the influencer was like, if I know I'm getting copy and pasted, what is the point here? They even specified it, like when people is just the template, like they couldn't even fill out the first name. So question for you, Christie, what sort of lengths do you take to actually really personalize that initial outreach? What are the things that you say, hey, I'm going to include this to make sure that influencer knows that I am talking to them?
Yeah, for sure. So when we're going to start outreach, me and any of my team members, we sit down and we create obviously a template of what needs to be said, such as deliverables, what the actual ask is, what the client is, things like that. But for me, it's super important. Number one, always use someone's first name. Like, hello, so-and-so, dear so-and-so, hey, so-and-so.
Question, what if they have an alias? What do you do?
So Andy and I actually paired together on not an alias email recently, but this girl went by both of her first names.
Okay.
And I was like, Andy, do I call her the first name? Do I call her the second name? Do I call her both? And he was like, I think you should call her both. What did you say?
AKA doing business as?
I think we came up with like an abbreviation nickname that encompassed encompassed both. So we will hey RD. But again, taking that extra moment to figure it out, I think was really important. Yeah. And then sort of like a North Star for how we do this type of outreach.
And she went with the deal. She responded.
Really? So. Win. Lesson learned.
Her agent laughed at what we said. So it was a moment.
Well,
but
how about that then? Do you ever treat agents a little bit differently than influencers?
Absolutely.
So I remember when I was doing a lot of outreach, I'm like, all right, reaching out to an agent, business, like let's just cut to the chase and kind of get there.
Yeah.
But I'll also say this, some of the best relationships that I had were with agents because once we got through the business, we're like, okay, we're kind of on the same page here. Let's get to know each other a little bit better and like chum around. And obviously not everyone's up for that, but it was an interesting dynamic in terms of like reversing that sort of approach to building that relationship.
Yeah. And something for me that's really important is that when we're sending out the email, obviously a lot of people, are getting the templated aspect of it, but in the beginning and in the subject and how I'm addressing you, it's important to make the subject tailored to who you're talking to. So if I see that I'm reaching out to, Alex is the influencer, but I'm having an agent email for Mike, I'm not going to reach out and say, hey, Alex, I want you to do this project. I'm going to say, hello, Mike. I know you represent Alex and I'd like her to do this project. And I think that is like a small detail that actually goes a really, really long way.
Yeah. I think that when you can communicate in an effective way that actually says like, hey, I know what's going on here. I'm not just going to blanket this out. I know the situation. That can go a long way as well. And as far as, taking it a step further, you go through the execution, you're getting all the things done that need to get done. What about maintaining the relationship? How do you guys take the next step to make sure that, we have such a good experience with this influencer. Let's keep them in mind. Let's keep our foot in the door. How do we make sure that we're going to be able to tap them down the line?
Yeah. I mean, I have a lot of favorite aspects about working with influencers and agents, but my absolute favorite is taking it offline. and meeting in person if we have that opportunity at all. It's important to me that when I've worked with an influencer that I keep up that relationship by saying, let's grab a coffee, or I'd love to come, if your agent is local and you're local, I'd love to come meet with you guys or have you into the office. So I absolutely love having that offline time and disconnecting, because this is obviously a very saturated world, another buzzword for us. But that authentic, like face-to-face time for me with influencers is super important. And that's how I've created some of my best, most beneficial deals on both sides, is because I already had those relationships with those influencers.
Do you have a budget allocated for influencer relations?
I just, take people out to little lunches and coffees and such, and I just go ahead and expense it. It's, something that's obviously important to us as a business to cultivate those relationships. That's one of my main KPIs in my role, is to cultivate relationships with influencers and agents. Yeah.
And the next time they get an email from Social Chain, or more specifically from you, they're like, okay, like I know that I'm in for not the most brutal time. Like this is something that like I can actually have fun with. And that's honestly, so we've gone out to lunch a few times. You've been in the office a few times.
I have eaten food in front of you. In a meeting that you catered.
Lots of cheese.
There we go. The thing is that like lunches are the best. No, okay, I should track back on that. Lunches are one of the most fun parts of the job, is being able to like, get to know you guys personally and like learn about, what's happening outside of the office, because we are people, If I know that I can talk to somebody about X, Y, and Z for any other reason besides work, I think that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
We actually had like this fun little exercise about fun things that we want to do with our customers, a la go to medieval times, go like to do a pottery class, escape the room type stuff, and that sort of stuff. As silly as it sounds, it's construction. It's something that you're experiencing together to say, all right, we are going to make the effort to, because we care about you. All of our customers, especially you guys, matter a lot to us. Making the trip out to Brooklyn to hand deliver X, Y, and Z, stuff like that really makes a difference with Julius customers, and I'm sure with agency customers as well. So if you guys ever want to do something a little bit more fun,
I'm so down for medieval times. It's wild.
If we sit in the Blue Knight section, I'll consider it. Me and Red had a falling out, and I am.
We're both down for medieval times.
I understand. I remember though, when I was at the agency, we did an escape the room thing, which was kind of, well, first of all, I've never lost escape the room. So if we do decide to do that, and if I lose with you guys, I'm gonna be pissed.
We went recently,
and Christie and I, I'd say, we lost very hard.
Yeah. Yes. Completely agree.
So, but I do remember, it was a little competitive, but it was like a little healthy competitive. Mm-hmm. And you're thrown into a situation that makes you guys, think about working with this person who I don't maybe work with on my brand team all the time, but it's someone that I need to sit down, figure out this timing, figure out this project in a time constrained situation. And it forces people to come together. So bravo to those escape the room things. They kind of took off. And I hope that like most of their business is from colleagues trying to get out of the workspace.
It's a really great way to see how your coworkers strategize and think, especially if it's people you don't work with that closely that often, the minds that come together.
It was also kind of interesting to see what roles and responsibilities different people took.
Yes.
So like I was there, like off to the side, there was like this combination lock, and I'm just like, all right, I'm going to focus on this one thing. Let all those people who really need to be at the center of the attention, like really just focus on that sort of thing. I'll go do my thing, let them know that I had a success, and then I will, make sure that my presence is known. Andy, let's talk a little bit about, client relations and making sure that they feel the love. Are there things that you do personally or that Social Chain does to make sure that, what, Andy's doing a great job today. We're working so hard for you. We just did a big exercise with one of our customers, and, we were doing a custom list of influencers, but then we were just going to send it over. But then we're like, what, we need to make sure that they understand how hard we work for them, and not just to make sure that there is that transparency and so that they value us, but so they're like, wow, like this presentation really matters. This is like, they're putting in the extra effort, not just to send it through the internet, but that like, it's something that they're taking the time to doctor up and making sure that they have something presentable. Tell us a little bit about your approach to that, if anything, and like what impact you think that's made on your business or professionalism.
Yeah. So we have clients that are located, I should say clients and prospective clients that are located in the UK, in New Jersey, and some are 6 blocks away.
Jersey, yeah, you.
And I'll say that, so I think we did away with hand delivery because I can't take that flight every time I want to tell our British clients we got their back. That being said, whenever we do a pitch or whenever we are trying to send things, obviously things can live in the body of an email, but that doesn't show that you give, an S word.
Yeah.
What we do is we have on-staff design teams to make sure that everything we send through is not only like, oh, that last answer you needed, it tethers back to that cohesive strategy we originally presented. And then we also kind of try to show a little bit love in each pitch. So for a hotel client that we pitched, we actually physically went to the hotel and kind of filmed a piece of sketch comedy. For a retail client, we actually did some man on the street interviews outside their store.
Awesome. I bet you that was super unexpected too.
Well, so here's the thing. In the world where there's a million influencer tools and a million agencies, you can't always be the biggest, but you can care the most.
There you go.
And you can be different.
I love that. That's awesome.
Especially as we're starting out, we're an office of about 30 now in the US, and we're kind of a global company of hundreds. But as we make our footprint in a very crowded city in New York, that is a key point that our CEO, our GM from the top down really insists that we bring to the table for every one of our clients.
Yeah, I love that. There was a term, I don't know what term, I guess a phrase, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. Let's just call it pitch theater. This is how they determine it. It's like, it's not just about the deck that you're putting up. It's about the expression of you as people. Just to go back to the theme of today's discussion, is like, you're not just getting the work that we can do, you're getting us as partners. And I think that as the head of customer success at Julius, that's what I try and instill with my team, but also the rest of Julius whenever we get in front of clients. And I hope that our clients do take away that you're getting this person who is kind of fun, right?
Yeah,
sure. Right? Yes. I don't know. I think that type of stuff to everything that you're saying, it's such a crowded space. I don't want to be just another email that they have to respond to. That's not a good way to progress. That's how you just get I don't want to be another spam thing. And honestly, that's what we try and do with our newsletter as well. We want to stay informed and let our customers know that it's informed, but adding, a layer of personality so that people know that it's not just some marketer trying to tell them something. Like, we have people here that are in the business of people that can connect with you as a person. So it does go quite a long way. And I want to toss it back to you, Christie, and taking kind of the same conversation about when you're looking for influencers, how do you make sure that this influencer is going to be the right person for your client tone of voice, for the objectives that you need to hit, for the deliverables they need to do? If you could talk about not just about reach and followers and engagement rate and stuff like that, but like, how do we say like, all right, I think that they are good for this because I can see this and this and this about them?
Yeah, definitely. So obviously, first step is really understanding exactly what the client wants. Yeah. And that's where, people like Andy come into play. Our strategy team comes into play, where they really get the understanding of who the target audience is, what the client's brand voice is, what exactly they're looking for. If there's any like do's or don'ts for the client of things that they don't want from their influencers and their creators, understanding that is the most important step for me, so that I know and that I can brief any of my team members working on it as well. So going from there, I do a lot of search on the search tools. I do a lot of hand selecting via Instagram, YouTube, everything. And I would say I'm a little bit of a lurker.
Yo, professional stalkers. I am a
professional lurker. Yeah. So I go in when I find, a potential influencer off of face value that I think, oh, your content is really lovely. Or, we're looking for mommies. You have a nice set of kids. You guys look really happy in all your photos together.
You look happy, but are you happy?
We're really not happy. Sure. Let's go figure it out. So for me, something that's really important that I do, I go back about 3 months on content.
That's a nice little window right there.
Yeah, I go really, really deep back and just sort of see what they've been up to, what brands they've been partnering with, what sort of evolution their content has had, whether that's quality or maybe they're using different filters, new color schemes, things like that, to see if that's something that's going to fit in with our clients. So imagery is a big one for me. That's something I really love about the influencer realm as a whole, is content creation. That's probably my favorite part. So checking out their imagery, very important. Obviously, like you said, like engagement rate is important. So I do have to run through and check that.
You still have to keep your client happy.
I have to, cross my T's and dot my I's, but just, those types of things. And then also I really enjoy if they have a blog. I love to go read the blog and see what their voice is.
And I would actually imagine that long form content kind of enables you to really internalize who you're dealing with. I mean, of course, writing styles are a thing, but the content that they put out on their blog, I would imagine is like, could be kind of personal. And, it could also be pretty, objective about what's happening in the space or whatever it is, but it's people's opinions. And that's the type of stuff that you want to lean in. That's why you were working with influencers in the first place, because they have opinions and because they have personalities, and that's the type of stuff you want to lean into.
Yeah, definitely. I love to read their captions, long form captions. I love to read their blog content, really get to know them as people, because their content is one thing as far as photos, but getting to know them through their written content is another really great way to know if they'll be good for your brand. If their voice sort of matches the brand voice, that can be just a really nice like synergy immediately.
I was working on a Super Bowl campaign, which it was a cool campaign, that's for sure. We had a lot of great video content and all this stuff, whatever. When we were looking for influencers, though, we needed to go through a ton of different football fans. And while we were vetting them, the client was like, we're a squeaky clean brand. We can't have, vulgar content, any scandalous content, anything like that. And we're like, okay, cool. Brand safety. Got it. Check. We can work with this. However, for the level of influencer we're looking for the type of thing that we needed them to do, they had to create video content. We found that a lot of the influencers were using a ton of profanity. And the content that they put out was, frankly, a lot about like the cheerleaders. So like, and all that sort of stuff. And it took us a lot of time to educate the client about, understanding that in this space, like maybe this is the type of tone and language that we need to combat. Not to say that I agreed with it, but just to say like, hey, like maybe we need to tone it down, because this is what the world looks like in this micro influencer football fandom like crazy. This is what these communities are talking about. So there is that balance of saying, all right, brand, you know what you want, or you think you know what you want, but this is the reality of the influencers or the community that were different.
Social listening in a way,
but like through the lens of people talking about something very specific. And, I was actually talking to a colleague of mine about, like Reddit and, the small little niche communities of the world, and, how, brands think that they always know what's best. But then when you get to it and understanding who they are as people and finding a really unique way to engage that unique community with this specific tone of voice and understand that you're dealing with them as people first, that's how we end up finding the wins for this Super Bowl campaign. And I think that when you have such a tight-knit community of fandom specifically, be it sports or entertainment or whatever it is, you kind of got to let your guard down a little bit in terms of what you are prepared to not deal with. That is not the right word, but I'm saying like, if you think that you have key messaging and key messaging and key messaging and key messaging, I think for that Super Bowl campaign, we had like an 18-page brief for the influencers, and we're like, you just kind of got to let them do their thing, because they know how to engage with their fans.
Like apartment hunting. What are your negotiables? What are your non-negotiables?
Yeah.
It's important to understand that we obviously are going to do everything we can to get you everything that you want out of the influencers. But at some point, like, people have to exist.
Yeah, totally. So that needle in the haystack is always something that, frankly, as Julius, who has to sometimes find influencers for our customers, we're always trying to manage the expectation that, you know what? Sometimes there are going to be needles in the haystack that the people just might not exist. And if we do find these people and they're not, exactly what you're looking for, you need to remember that you're looking for people. This isn't a media buy in the traditional sense where you can just pick and choose every single little detail. You're dealing with somebody on the other end of this who cares. And that is the whole point of working with influencers, in my opinion,
Completely agree.
Yeah. So talking about influencers as people to everything we're talking about the art of personalization. We want to find people that are going to be doing, things in a personal way. But when it comes to, treating people as people versus treating people as professionals, I think that's something that comes up a lot with influencers. And I think that I'm a pretty patient guy for sure, but I also have had influencers who are just not paying attention to what's going on. So how do you guys balance production and what needs to happen versus saying like, hey, I need to maintain a relationship with this influencer?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when we kick off a campaign, we send our influencers really lovely briefs that give them some inspiration boards of, a mood they can go for. Personally, I try to leave creative direction open to the influencers. They're content creators and that's what they do. And they know what's going to resonate with their audience the best. So unless we have an extremely specific aesthetic from the brand, I try to leave that piece of it open. And then we'll also provide them with a slide of all of your deliverables, all of your tagging requirements. It's right there. There's no questions on what needs to be tagged. And then there's also a list, which I refer to as the please do's and please do nots.
That's so important. Do you think that, I think that when it comes to briefing influencers, the more you do it, the better you get at it for sure. Are there clients that are just like, like we're going to do it this way? Is there a lot of education you feel still in this space about how to treat influencers as people?
Personally, I haven't worked with a lot of clients who have been very involved in the way that we brief our influencers. I mean, I like to specifically know from the client, are there do nots that you absolutely do not want to see in your content? And really, it doesn't tend to go much further for me. They typically let us run with that process of briefing the influencers because we're handling all the relationships. And what I've noticed works best is, like I said, just creating a nice PDF brief, very simple. It never goes over 5 slides for me. Just something that's visual. I feel that when I am briefing influencers via email, just in the body, that's where a lot of details actually get overlooked and lost. So I've noticed that when you put it in more of a visual format, that does seem to resonate with them better as far as them looking over it, getting an understanding of what they need to do, and coming back with more detailed questions if they have them.
So I think that there's some things that you can laugh off. Like we were actually hosting one of our Influence Live events, which I think both of you have been to. And, one of the influencers that we're going to have on the panel, her kid got sick and couldn't go, and we laughed it off because parent blogger has a kid who's sick. Well, that makes sense.
So on brand.
My question for you is when do we realize that there is a lack of control maybe sometimes with production, especially because we are dealing with people? What does that kind of look like for you guys?
Yeah, definitely. For me, most of the time, it's situations where I just laugh it off. I can't say that I've worked with a lot of influencers in my career that I've had genuine problems getting the content from them, which has been great. There have been a few occurrences here and there where they sort of go dark and they won't answer your emails and you're wondering where they are. But more often than not, the second they get back to your email, they explain, I had a, huge family crisis, or, my computer got water spilt on it, something. And
the old computer, my dog ate my homework.
It's never for me been anything that's been detrimental. And, it happens. Something that I do notice, it happens a lot less when they have a manager. The manager has the accountability aspect a lot more on lock. But then, there's something to be said. I work with a lot of influencers who manage themselves, and they are just on it. They kill it every time, and I never have to question if they're going to turn their content in on time.
The side hustle is real. I feel like there's a lot of I have some friends who are professional marketers by day, but then on the other end of it, they're side hustling trying to do this, and they're like, if I don't do this as professionally as possible, this isn't going to happen. So I can totally appreciate that.
Yeah. And I mean, if content is late and the person's not responding, I have no problem sending triple follow-up emails. I have no shame in that aspect. So I'll keep chasing and I'll get what I need eventually. And I mean, at the end of the day, if you don't produce the content, then the partnership's not happening.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And to everything that we are talking about, it's all about that building that one-to-one relationship with your influencers, making sure that that your clients also know what's going on, and that there is a lot of transparency about what is happening at that very specific and detailed production element. And speaking of that one-to-one connection, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about consumers. I think that this isn't anything new, but like social is creating a really unique opportunity for marketers to connect with consumers in a really intimate way. People on social are able to create communities really, really close. I actually want to read this quote that when I was at Social Media Week, this woman, Obella Brown West, I actually used to work with her at the agency. She was talking about driving sales through social. And I want to read this just because I don't think I would be able to say it better myself. She says, "One-to-one communication inspires action. There is a new expectation of authentic one-to-one communication through technology." And she was talking about sales, like actually saying, here's my consumer, this is, I'm going to reach out to them. And, we've seen over the past years, the direct to consumer wave, everything is direct to consumer now. So I guess my question for you is, how do you think that brands or marketers now more than ever can or are using social and technology to build that one-to-one communication with their target consumers or others or beyond, or doing something good in the world even? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'll say brands can almost get a little too excited about that, where I think that well, listen, marketing is a funnel. I don't have to take anyone back to marketing 101, but right. You start with brand awareness, then brand consideration, trial, and then you eventually convert. Yeah. So I think oftentimes with direct to consumer being such a popular way of leveraging social, people think that that's just all it takes is one good paid social ad, and I'm going to have people going to this movie at 7:30. I'm going to have people buying my outfits online, and I'm going to have people drinking my water sent to them via this Amazon link, which I can track. Right. So I think that there's totally a place for it, but you have to earn the place. So that is what the thing with social is like. This isn't a 30-second spot. This isn't a front page takeover, and this isn't a cover. You have to justify why you're in people's social feed, and then the people who really understand that and kind of do the hard work it takes to think about what their consumer wants. Are they solving a problem? They're the ones who benefit from this direct to consumer strategy because they've thought about all the steps it takes to get that consumer to convert, as opposed to, I think, people just getting really excited thinking that they can divide their marketing budget by 10 and still find that effectiveness.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I think, I'll be the first to admit that I hate getting retargeted and retargeted and retargeted and retargeted and retargeted one more time.
Can I ask which brands retarget you?
Oh, all of them. We all can understand that, there can be an effective strategy to that for sure as marketers. But I think that there is a way, to do it better or worse than others. And I think that what I'm really trying to hit at here is that, I hear what Obella is saying about sales and creating that one-to-one connection. And then I think about influencers as these people who have probably the most, to everything you're saying, have earned the right to build that one-to-one connection with their target, with their audience, which is effectively a lot of brands' target consumers. And that's where the light bulb goes off for me. And I hope a lot of people that are trying to get into influencer marketing is that's how they can and should be using influencers, as these people that can bridge the gap on their behalf and go to spaces where they can't go by themselves.
And it's true. It's like knowing the doorman at a club you want to get into. Right?
There it is.
And
slip them a 20.
Well, yeah. No. I think if you want to get in that club and the doorman says, in order to get in, you have to do X, Y, and Z, and you don't do X, Y, and Z, you can't be surprised when you don't get into the club. You can't be surprised when you get called out and security comes. So
honestly, I think that's one of the best analogies I've heard for that type of experience.
I used to bounce in New Orleans. So doormen are our future.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, and also just bouncing off of that, another really great way to utilize your influencers past the partnership, which is something I really enjoy doing, is going back to your sponsored posts and really looking through the comments and using them as market research, essentially, seeing what people are saying about your products, how they're responding to them.
Good, bad, and ugly.
The influencers coming in. If if your brand handles their community management or your agency handles it for you, having your community managers go and engage with those people. If they've asked a question about one of your products that the influencer didn't answer or doesn't know, your brand should totally go on from the brand page and answer it. It's really cool. And I come from a community management background, so I used to love to do that. I loved interacting with consumers on influencer posts.
Yeah, I remember I had a client that was like, the influencer posted and then some of the comments were negative, and they're like, why did we work with this influencer if some of the comments are gonna be negative? I'm like, because
it's just research.
That's a nice angle, but again, we're talking about like people on the internet who are talking about things that they might not always have a favorable disposition to, which I totally get. So you were talking about, knowing the doorman, and being able to connect with this person, you know the doorman, you go back to the bar over and over and over again. And I can't tell you how many times in the past 6 months to a year, I've seen, or even like trend predictions for 29 is like long-term partnerships. Like, great. I think that we all know that, building a relationship with influencers at this point is something that we all need to do. What I think we need to challenge ourselves to do is, to your analogy, take a doorman to lunch, make sure that, everyone knows that this is my doorman, and that, he's not just like a guy who makes sure I'm safe at the bar, that I'm incorporating him into my life. And how that actually, I think that connects is making our influencers at the core of our campaigns. If you're going to have a real relationship with this influencer, a flash in the pan execution isn't going, it could be effective. I'm not going to say there isn't a place for that. But what I am going to say is that I envision a brand or a company double downing on their partnership because they believe in it. And they can say, hey, I'm going to work with influencer Andy. He's done such great work for me. I'm going to elevate him. I'm going to make him, my chief hydration officer if I'm a water brand or something like that. Something, I'm drinking water right now.
Yeah,
and that's
there is no water brand we have in mind.
But I think the idea here is that it's not just about, it's great to know the doorman, and, especially for a consumer to see that post on an influencer's channel time and time and time again, it builds equity. And then by the end of, the quarter or the year, it's not of course Andy works for this water brand. Of course, it builds that really ding, 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 authentic relationship.
Everyone drink.
But I still, there's some brands that I think that are getting there. I think that some are doing it well, but I think that for me, what I want to see is that personalization get taken beyond social. Social, of course, is where influencers gain their notoriety and have probably the biggest audience and consumers to reach. But think about if they're able to do it on social, what else can we use it for? Out of home, traditional, whatever it is. And that's kind of where I want the brand marketers to be able to think about influencers, not just as an amplification tool. And honestly, that's how we build those one-to-one relationships a little bit further. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think that, obviously kicking off with an influencer for your brand, you never know if it will become a long-term partnership. So
Sure.
In the short term,
Unless you plan for it, I'd say.
See, I don't know if I would ever plan for a long-term partnership without testing, in my opinion.
Okay.
I think that testing period is super important.
What is a testing period in terms of like, is it amount of content? Is it amount of time? Is it time? Is it...
I would say probably a mix between the two. I would say, starting with one partnership, maybe, small on the deliverables and see how it goes. And then from there, okay, let's try one more time. Let's up the deliverables a bit. Maybe, add some video in, something like that. See how different types of content respond. Maybe add in a new vertical if they happen to have other platforms that they're prominent on besides what you started with. I think it's really important to see how the audience responds, because you could find someone with the look, they are so on brand, they create lovely content, they've worked with similar brands in the past, and then they create, nice content for your brand and it launches and it just is not a good response.
Yeah.
And think if you've gotten yourself into a 9-month long contract with that person, you are stuck and you're not going to get out of it.
Yeah.
And so I just don't think that that's a safe route. I'm all about taking risks, but I think that you can take them in doses. So I think that starting those partnerships in the beginning, it's so nice to see what can come out of them, and then creating the long-term partnerships with the audiences and the influencers who really do resonate with your brand.
Now to flip the script a little bit, something that I've been toying around with is that, again, I think that marketers a lot of the time think that they know best, which, they do know their brands best, but that can kind of close some doors to opportunities that are great for the influencer. I was working on a car rental brand, and, we gave them, some free rentals, and it's great. But then, what we were really thinking is like, well, where do you want to go in the next 6 months or a year, and how can we facilitate that? So that's very transactional. It's, a trip or whatever. But then, for brands that have more of a strategic storyline or something like that, how can marketers create opportunities to ask the influencers, like, What are you passionate about and how can we help facilitate that?
Yeah, that's actually a question that I ask every influencer that I sit down with, get coffee with. If we're, catching up via email, maybe after a partnership that we've done recently or catching up with the agent, I love to ask, what have they been working on lately? What is sort of their focus right now? What are they looking to focus their content in on the next, 3, 6, 9 months to a year? And here's a list of the brands that we're working with. Do you think they could be a fit?
Oh, from an agency perspective, I love that. I really love that. Like going through the next 6 months. Oh, I see you're going to South by Southwest. My brand is going to be there. Are you interested in doing X, Y, and Z?
Yeah. And the
That's
agents
really cool.
and the influencers do it vice versa as well. Like I have a lot of influencers who slide into my DMs and my inbox being like, hey, I'm going to the Bahamas and I know you work with this brand. I'd love to get some, clothes into a lookbook. And so they're very proactive about it as well.
And I would imagine going back to everything that we're talking about with relationships and personalization, if I am able to heighten an influencer's experience, they're going to over deliver for me. They're going to be at that event, doing that thing, sharing that content because they're like, oh my God, this is perfect for exactly what I wanted to do anyway. But now there's just some icing on the cake. I think that's really cool. And the thing is that going back to personalization, it is the influencers, what they're doing already. And we always talk about, what is it? What are we talking about?
Authenticity.
But you really want to get that organic moment and being able to get in there. And that's how, you maybe not have thought that it was going to be a personalized moment for them, but if you plan for it, it can quickly become that.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that the more and more you build relationships with the influencer, you build it with their agent. I've seen so much amazing organic content come out of relationships with influencers that I have. And it always surprises me every single time when they over deliver on a story or a post, or they even, they post one image on their social, but they'll send me an entire file of raw files of what they shot.
I love that.
Every single time. I'm surprised. It happens relatively often, but
great.
I still jump for joy.
And you know what? Now you know that if you ask them to do something, they're going to be there and have your back as Christie the professional, making you look good in front of your clients.
Exactly. Really and cool. It creates beneficial partnerships both ways. Like the agents always love to over deliver for us. And then, I have at least a handful of 5 to 10 agents in my head who I consistently think I have a project. I would love to work with her again. She was great and her talent rocked. So it's really nice, to just create that relationship where you want to over deliver for each other.
Now, I actually have a question. So I was working with an influencer agency and they had a roster of influencers where they're kind of like the same vibe. Yes. Let's put it that way. I don't want to say cookie cutter by any means, but I'm just like, oh, I'm going to work with this agency. They have Sally A, Sally B, and Sally C. How do you...
I love Sally C.
That's Sally C.
So cool.
She's the Kardashian. So how do you make sure that you're getting the right Sally? In the sense that in the same vein of keeping the relationship with the agent.
Yeah, definitely. I don't do a lot of deals where I do batch work, if that makes sense. I haven't ever typically found that when I'm going for multiple different people in a campaign that they all happen to be rep by the same company. Maybe once or twice here and there, but I've never worked with the same agent on one campaign for more than 2 talent at a time ever.
That's really an interesting perspective because I remember when I was working with this talent agency, now that I'm looking back, of course they're going to pitch me 4 or 5 others because it's their job.
Yeah. And
so maybe that was a little short-sighted on my end.
No, because I'm sure a lot of people do that. And the thing is that it's super easy to go ahead and do a batch with an agency. But the thing is those might not be the fit for your client.
Totally.
And while it, may cause me an added extra couple hours or added stress to find the right people, I'm not going to stop until those people are found.
Totally.
So it's easy to do the batch, but better to just go forward and find who's right.
I completely agree. So one thing that I want to kind of conclude the conversation with is, thinking about 2019, what are things that you guys think that you are going to do to increase personalization across your clients, your influencers, your colleagues, the consumers? Are there any tangible bits that you think, honestly, our listeners should know? Be like, hey, I plan on doing this to increase that one-to-one connection. Anything to share or any thought?
Well, something I was thinking about
New Year's resolution, if you will.
A New Year's resolution. Just something I was thinking about the other day, and this is definitely on my agenda for January, February is over the holidays. I actually got some just really lovely gifts from influencers that I've worked with and agents that I've worked with. They just decided to send me like a nice thank you gift in the mail and, just thanking me for the partnership. And I've never done that on my end, sent out gifts to my influencer partners. And I think that that's something that I'm going to do in 2019.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
I remember I worked with an influencer and she sent me a very expensive digital picture frame. Nice. And I'm like, whoa, that's really thoughtful.
She probably got it from a brand deal.
Yeah, probably. I don't really care, but she was top of mind.
Yes.
Dude, gifts.
Yes.
Everyone likes getting presents. Everyone likes getting mail. And everyone likes being treated.
I love snail mail. So I was like over the moon,
and
honestly.
Mom, if you're listening to this, still keep those cards coming. It's all good.
I have kept every single birthday card that I've ever received since I was 13 years old.
Because it's lovely.
They're all under my bed in a box.
Yeah. Good for you. Andy, you got anything?
Flip side.
I guess some letters some exes wrote me once. Oh, you mean anything about... Oh, sorry. I'm so distracted. Yeah. No, I'd say that as far as personalization goes, just to keep maintaining relationships, like you said, they can be completely chummy. They can be, distant. But as long as the work that you're bringing to the table for your clients fixes their problems, you're consultative, you listen. I feel like that is the thing that, we want to keep bringing to our clients in the influencer world and beyond. And just always, I'd say just our company's motto being first, fearless, ever changing, always keeping that at the forefront of all of our partnerships that we do.
I can really appreciate that. I love what you said about active listening and really paying attention to what people need.
What did you just say?
It's not a matter of, especially in a software company, we do our best to get our customers things that they need as quickly as possible, but making sure that they understand that we heard them in the first place, I think can go a long way with just saying yes, I know this is a thing. I know why you care about this, not just what it is. I really love your sentiment on that. So yeah, guys, I think that's it on my end, unless you have any last moments of wisdom that you want to share. But if not, thanks for joining on this lovely first podcast of the rebranded Julius podcast.
Yeah, it was so much fun. I'm down to do it again.
Yeah. All right, guys, have a good one.
You too.
See you, Danny.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to Julius Profiles, a podcast brought to you by Julius Influencer Marketing. To hear more episodes, learn more about influencer marketing, or to discover how our platform adds a human touch to advertising, please visit juliusworks.com.